David, let's kick it off with you. What do we expect out of May's 5-hour cabinet meeting today, and why so long?
Well, they've got an awful lot to discuss. The first part of it is what they call a political cabinet meeting. That's when there'll be no civil servants present, so they can hopefully hammer out some decisions. And, you know, she's really got to decide how to break the deadlock that we're seeing. Does she tack towards a closer relationship? Now, we know that didn't win a majority in Parliament last night, but, you know, only by a couple of votes, and she instructed her cabinet to abstain. So there may be a majority, in fact, for a customs union, for a single market, if she were to pivot that way. Or does she say, you know what, we've tried everything, we've got to go for no deal? Or does she say, you know, we need to put this back to the people? That would be either through another referendum or even a snap election. That, of course, would mean a long extension to Brexit, possibly up to a year. So a range of options still on the table for her, none of them very palatable at all.
David, good morning. May's deal could still come back, but Stephen Barclay making that point yesterday, and others actually in the Conservative Party in particular in Cabinet making that point. What I found really interesting was if you looked at which of the options the different parties voted for, some of those who are very much more Remain than others, so you know, what used to be the independent group, now Change UK, that type of voting bloc voted against some pretty soft Brexit options because referendum number 2 is still on the list. If referendum number 2 were not on the list, you wonder whether they would back any of the other softer options. So there's still a lot of tactics at play here. There's still a lot of possibilities for another, for an option to gain some majority.
That's right, and they're going to have another go, it seems, tomorrow by possibly whittling down that list again. But you say this has been the fundamental problem here, this sort of tactical voting on various sides. You can say, well, yes, but why? There are plenty of Labour MPs who are probably very happy to see Mrs May's deal, in fact, go through, because they can go back to their Leave voting constituencies. But of course, what Labour really want is a general election. Of course, why would they then help Mrs May get her deal over the line? So Parliament is riven with these different alliances and allegiances, and that is why we're seeing it's pretty much impossible for it to come to a firm conclusion.
Maria, out in Brussels, it's still looking like they have no clue. They have just as little a clue what's going on in Britain as Parliament and the Prime Minister do. What's the appetite for extending negotiations further?
Hey, Matt, I think that's a very fair description. Michel Barnier is actually speaking now, and he said that unless you do get a positive majority come out of the UK Parliament, the reality is there's only 2 options left. One is the UK decides to leave without a deal, which, by the way, I hear this from many people in Brussels many times. The idea that an accidental no deal is actually very real, or just decide to extend Article 50. But of course, this will require a very strong justification. I think what's interesting, though, is that in Brussels, the debate and the tone of the debate has really changed. We had the foreign German deputy minister over the weekend come out with very strong language that I'm not going to say on air, but obviously very strong language on Brexit and the way he thinks this has gone. We've heard from Barnier, from Tusk, from many people now decide or come out and say, well, we just don't know what's going on. It's the UK that needs to decide. And the debate, as I say here, is not just so much about helping Prime Minister May. The EU will tell you that's done. It's about picking the option that they think will be less bad for the EU, whether that is getting stuck in a series of extensions or actually telling Prime Minister you've got to decide. It's still to be seen.
Well, Maria, we're hearing that Theresa May is pushing Leo Varadkar to get ready for a hard Brexit if that's necessary in Ireland. What's the sense of the possibility there will be a hard Brexit ordered by the EU in Ireland?
Right, well, that's a good question, because if you look at the no deal, it implies that there will be one, and that maybe is also one of the reasons why Angela Merkel will be in Dublin on Thursday. Now, we've heard many times from the Irish government that they do not want to be put in this position, and they also think the backstop is needed. Then that makes it very complicated to just kind of operate on the basis that there will be no border. And maybe what's interesting here is that Angela Merkel will go to Dublin, and she may probably want to see more details about the planning when it comes to that border if there is a no deal.
Matt, of course, referring to Angela Merkel there, the German Chancellor, who've been putting that pressure on Leo Varadkar. We'll see how that develops, won't we, on Thursday? Good to raise that point. What else do we need to know then in terms of the Brexit conversation from a Brussels perspective then, Maria? Is there any kind of the meetings taking place, or are they just waiting to find out what this cabinet meeting concludes this morning? I mean, we might be in a point where we see resignations, and that might give us a clue as to which side is winning the cabinet argument.
Right, Anna, just very quickly, there is nothing planned because they want to just see what the plan looks like from the UK. What they have been very crystal clear about is that before that emergency summit, they want to have time to digest this new plan if we do get one. So they don't want to be in a situation where they're only told a day before the emergency summit, look, this is what we want to do. So they do want to have time to look at this plan again if we get one in detail.